It's nice to see everyone here, a few familiar faces, a few new faces. My talk is about resilience testing at Reversec US. So I'm here to introduce Reading Rainbow. And for anybody who's a fan of 80s children TV, I'm sorry if you have a theme song stuck in your head now. But yeah, Reading Rainbow, the Rainbow team. It's not a novel name. I'm sure it means a lot to a lot of people here, which is why before getting into it, I just want to get ahead on a point about terminology. We work in a very jargon-filled industry. We have 5 words for the same thing. The same thing can be called 5 different things. So in this talk, I'm going to name our services. I'm going to give them a name because I have to call them something. But sort of the essence of what I'm talking about is what these services do. So don't worry too much if I call something a name that you might think is something different in your experience. It's the objectives. It's what the service actually does that we're trying to focus on here. And what are these colors of the rainbow? Red and purple team. I think everyone in this room will have heard those terms before. And then the attack path mapping, the APM, something that's a bit more Reversec-centric. So we'll go through all those. And then we'll look at the rainbow team, what's bringing all those different service areas together.
For APM?
He's stolen my joke on the APM page, because, yeah. But I think, yeah, we have 7 colors of the rainbow and only 2 colors in this slide. So I think we'll have some kind of raffle at the end on who can win the color for the APM. One last stop before we get into it. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a security consultant at Reversec. Been working in technology for 15 years, but the first 10 of those were in engineering, R&D engineer, systems engineer, the medical field, the mobile field. And then 5 years ago, I switched over to security. So I like to say that I used to make things, and now that I break them, but ethically, of course. So we'll start off with the red team, the rock star of cybersecurity. And I'm sure everyone in this room knows what a red team is, but I still think it's worth just quickly going over the essence of a red team. Because as I say, industry full of jargon, sometimes these terms do mean different things. And I know this firsthand. When I first applied for my first job in cybersecurity, the top line of my CV said, I am a member of the red team. What I meant was that I'm interested in offensive security rather than defensive security. But the person who was interviewing me was the head of the red team at the company I was applying for. That led to a lot of questions that I didn't have answers for, but I just about managed to charm my way through. So what is that specificity about a red team? And it's all about the simulation. It's defining a predefined target and then working to achieve that target. So you're not looking at any particular technology necessarily. The shortest path to the objective is what the testers will try and do, which makes it the closest to what a real attack might be like. And it really tests an organization's defenses, technical, personnel. So yeah, it's that simulation that makes a red team what it is. And so it's a good question to ask when to do a red team. If you don't have a particular mature SOC, then a red team might not really add that much value, because testing, stress testing the SOC is a key part of the red team, that response aspect of it. So you do need that mature blue team. There are other reasons why you might need a red team. Regulations, globally, it's very different in different regions, but sometimes you have to have a red team, like maybe governmental regulations, maybe internal regulations. But if there's something says you need a red team to be able to operate as a business, then that's a good time to do a red team. When the budget is available is a key point. A red team is not usually a cheap option. So, making sure that there is a budget available is key.
The rob, right?
He snuck that one in, yes. But it's funny. The other side of that is the fact that you need the high budget sort of was some of the kernel of what created the next service we're going to talk about, the APM. I will refer to this service as an APM a lot because I struggle to say attack path mapping. I know APM has a lot of, it's an acronym with lots of different meanings, but when I say APM, this is what I mean. And I would say it's, Reversec's most unique offering. And I think one of the best places to start is to look at that attack path map that the APM produces. So you can immediately see the breadth of coverage is much greater than what a red team might produce. It's all the different paths that an attacker might take to achieve its objectives. We have different starting points, maybe external, maybe internal, maybe third-party vendors, different types of starting positions, and then defining the different objectives.
Yeah.
And then it's looking at as much of the estate as possible, that holistic approach that DJ mentioned, to try and find all the different ways. So if you think about in this example, along the bottom, we have an example of credentials being exposed, someone accessing that to access a database, stealing data, performing ransomware operations. If those credentials were removed and that particular path was closed off, doesn't mean that an attacker can no longer deploy ransomware. They can go through the cloud, through the CI/CD. There's all these different routes. So it's that holistic approach. It's what an APM is all about. And the essence of the APM can be divided into these three sections. So it's objective focused, similar to a red team. We define those objectives. We try to make them as business impactful as possible. So we're not just, some arbitrary technical achievement. We try to understand what a business might be concerned about and what scenarios, what objectives an attacker might be trying to achieve. And it's that broad scope. So it's not one particular technology. It's not one particular team. It's as holistic as possible so we can get that view of all the different paths. And it's collaborative. And this is probably the most important one. We work with the teams. We work with the SMEs, with the security team, to try and understand their concerns, their technologies, what they've deployed, how they've deployed it. We do direct interviews with them to try and get as much information as possible to inform the testing, so it can be really tuned to the areas of interest. And also we can skip a lot of discovery steps and make it very time efficient. Equally, in APM, we're not concerned about stealth. It's a very noisy engagement. The alerts will be popping off all over the place. But we deliberately don't worry about that because, again, we can get better coverage, better understanding of those attack paths in a more time-efficient and therefore cost-efficient manner. Purple team, back to another famous one. So we have some of our own jargon to introduce. ADCA, Attack Detection Capability Assessment, is our formal name for a purple team. But a purple team, it's all about the detection. The red team, blue team coming together to make the purple team. I think everyone, again, in this room knows where the purple team comes from. So the red team, that's us. We emulate the attacker. We perform the execution. While the purple team is primarily focused on detection, we will also look at preventative controls during that execution phase, doing things that an attacker might do and seeing if there are any controls in place that would prevent that from ever being executed. And then the blue team, it's the client, triages that, looks through the data, was there telemetry, what's the source of that, is it being funneled into the SIEM correctly, our alert setup, are they firing when they're expected, are they good alerts? And then those two teams come together to make the purple team. If we go a bit further into the different phases of the purple team, we start off with a threat modeling exercise. And again, that's because we want to make sure that we're looking at the most interesting areas that matter to the organization that we're testing. We want to understand the target system, and then we develop the test cases based on that threat model output. And then, yes, we design the custom test cases. We obviously have a library of standard cases, but each purple team engagement will have a custom list of test cases specifically designed to the technology, particular part of the attack chain we're interested in. And we also design the appropriate tooling at this point. So if it's a purple team in the cloud, maybe we'll introduce some tooling into the cloud itself to execute. Depending depending on the objectives, we can design the appropriate tooling to make the test go as smoothly as possible. Finally, come to the execution. Key point about a purple team, comparing it to something like a red team or an APM, it's the discrete execution of those test cases. We execute them one at a time, and we look for the telemetry and the alerts for each of those discrete actions. We're not as concerned as the full attack paths that we've looked at previously. And the execution, it works. We work in step with the blue team. The red team and the blue team are working together. It's not just about firing off 700 test cases, waiting for someone to wade through all that data, coming back and then writing that up. We work in tandem. So if we need to slow down the execution to really dig into some missing telemetry or something interesting that's happening, then we'll do that. If we need to speed up so we can do more test cases because we're finding the telemetry easy, it's about that working together collaboratively in real time. So this wasn't on the menu at the beginning, but it's 2026, so I can't have a talk about technology without mentioning AI. So I wanted to just briefly share some thoughts on AI, in reference to resilience testing. But as with all things AI, everything changes so much, and there's so much information, some confirmed, some unconfirmed. These are all just kind of ideas. I'm sure there'll be some that are agreed with, some that are disagreed with, some that will change. I actually ran through this presentation on Monday, and some of the things that I said on Monday, I now no longer agree with myself. So we start off with the offensive AI. So what AI attacking your systems, what does that mean? There's been a lot of talk about the time to exploit. So going from like days down to like hours, minutes. So that volume of effective attacks, like there's the presence of that increasing on the horizon. AI-powered offensive tooling. So that's going to bring higher volume and unsophisticated attackers. The script kiddies, they're now going to have access to these tools, so they're going to be able to attack systems in a different way. But how does this impact something like a red team? Does it change how you operate those kind of tests? And I don't think it really changes the essence of the red team, because the red team is all about simulating an attacker. The technology changes, the techniques change. That's always been true. We're in a particularly rapid point of change at the moment. But yeah, the attackers will be using AI. Red teamers will therefore be using AI. But on the other side of that, the defenders also have AI. So, if you listen to certain claims by certain companies, there will be zero vulnerabilities in all computer systems soon. So, it doesn't matter how much AI the attackers have. So that was AI on the outside. What about AI on the inside? Every organization now has AI tools enabled for productivity, for all kinds of different things. So this is a new attack surface in the organization. Does it fundamentally change? Does it inherently inject risk by adding AI tools? It shouldn't. There's no reason why it should. It's how that tool is implemented. There's the challenge, I think, that has happened a lot over the last few years is the pressure to implement, to not be last, has meant that people have pushed things at high speed and forgotten the basics. A lot of AI attacks that I've read about, sometimes when you look at them, it's authentication issues. It's the same as if you gave your user admin, but you gave your user a tool that has admin. It's sometimes the simple security gets overlooked. But what it definitely does do is it introduces that new attack surface, and one that we have to pay attention to when looking for those paths that an attacker might use to achieve their objectives. These are some of the things they'll be using. AI in detection, I think, is a really interesting area, and I would like to constantly having conversations with people about what it means and how best to go about it. The who in detection now, I think, is an interesting question. Was that a human? Was that an agent? Was that an agent called by an agent called by an agent? Does it matter? I think in some cases it would. In a incident response situation, if you want to try and diagnose what happened and stop it happening again, is there a malicious attacker? Or have the agents just kind of got out of control? I've seen that in my own system so many times where I think it's fine, and then I go back and there's something running at high speed that has got away from me. So I think the who is an interesting question. The thing that's not on this slide, but the thing that I've been looking into this week is the speed. So there was a really interesting article that came out this week of someone who tested setting up a cloud environment. The simulation is someone's got a key to access a cloud environment, and they give that key to Claude and say, go into the environment and escalate. And different models, different prompts, different success rates, but the success rate was reasonable. The more interesting thing was when it was successful, the attack was happening faster than the logs were being ingested by the SIEM. So because the way the logs are being configured to be ingested every 60 seconds and the attack was happening in 30, if someone got that key, gave it to Claude, they'd be admin before the alert fires. But also interestingly, that level, that sort of low sophistication level where you're just giving a key to a publicly available model and just saying go, has very interesting markers. Like in the telemetry, there are specific things. So being able to map those out and create alerts from them is something that we're going to have to be looking at in the near future. The Blue Team AI, I think this is one of the most mature uses for AI, and I think it's one of the best applications. You have a lot of data, a lot of telemetry, processing that to see if you can find patterns, see if you can find interesting things in it. I think it's 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I've seen these sorts of tools. So they're definitely not new. One thing to consider, of course, is the tool is only as valuable as the information going into it. If the source information is incomplete or missing or wrong, then the conclusions of the analysis tools are going to be off. Okay, so we come back to the Rainbow team. How do we bring that all together and sort of help to understand, find the pot of gold, find the most value? And I've talked about the 3 different services, and at a high level, all 3 services fit on a sliding scale of kind of nearly every access that you can think of. And you move one way towards a red team, the other way towards a purple team with APM in the middle. So duration and therefore cost is a big one, but realism, the coverage of testing, and there's many other things that you can do. So this is like a good starting point if you're trying to work out what the best test for a particular thing is. But I don't think it's the best way to do it. The better way is to really understand the objectives. To say, like, maybe the cost is prohibitive for a red team, so you're pushing that one down the scale. But again, if the regulation says you need a red team, then that sort of goes out the window and it needs to come back up this way. So it's really understanding the objective of what you're trying to achieve is the best way to choose the right service. And we can go further than that. I've talked at like a very high level about the different services that we have, but they're all very agile services and they're tuned to the specific needs for the specific project. We actually call it a tailored ADCA, where rather than testing the whole attack chain, maybe we're looking at discrete steps, initial access, data exfil, something like that. Or we're looking at particular technology. We're only looking at the cloud instance because that's the area that's new, perhaps, the area that we're interested in. So we can focus the detection capability assessment to the area of most interest. Assumed breach. Again, it's one of those terms, anyone who's heard of a red team will have heard of assumed breach and understand what that means. The initial access, the phishing campaigns can be lengthy, expensive. The outcomes can be unpredictable. So an assumed breach, you start with access on the system before continuing. But you can also do them the other way around. Like maybe you're interested in a particular team's capability at resisting to phishing. How easily can somebody gain access to the system? So we can do the initial access part in isolation as well. And then don't forget the physical red team. If the confidence is quite high in the digital perimeter, but maybe the output of an APM has sort of shown that if somebody does gain access to a certain part of the system, you can now see what they can do. What if someone can just walk in to the office and put a USB stick into a computer, or even a TV or a printer? I once gained access to a grocery store's corporate network using a label printer. For some reason, their network was completely flat. All the corporate machines and all the printers were all on the same flat network. So I just walked into a grocery store, picked up an unattended label printer, and I was able to access the corporate network. Didn't have to go anywhere near the corporate headquarters. So it's definitely an area to keep in mind. Of course, all these services, they're very closely related, so they can sort of intermingle, feed into each other, combining these services. These aren't in any way any recommendations. They're just sort of examples of how they feed into each other. So red team engagement, some of the outcome from that might be that there was a lack of reliable data. So the intrusion wouldn't have been detected because there was a gap in the telemetry. So maybe a replay purple team where we can focus specifically on that adversary emulation to try and close that gap. Or we start off with an APM, find those attack paths, but as I mentioned, these are noisy engagements. We're not interested in that engagement about detection. But once we have those attack paths, it is an interesting question of, would these actions cause alerts? Would the defensive team be able to deal with that? So a purple team workshop where you take the findings of the APM and feed that into a purple team to try and complement the APM with the detection capability assessment. And then so maybe at that point, you have everything in place, all the doors are closed, the purple team, the SOC is ready to go, and that's the time to pull the trigger on the red team. One final thought, the idea of continuous improvement. Attackers' techniques are always changing, the technology is always changing, so doing these things once and getting a baseline is great. What's more interesting is having some kind of cadence of seeing the change over time. That cadence depends on the situation, on the maturity of the security of an organization, what you're trying to achieve. So that could be an annual purple team where you just do the test annually and see if there's been improvements or if it's gone the other way. Or it can be something more regular, like purple team sprints are an idea where you design the full purple team test case set, and then you break that down, maybe again into the different stages of the attack chain, different groups, and you do them maybe like once a month. You have a shorter sprint purple team where you do those tests, and that way it might be easier to respond to the findings of that. And then next month you move on to the next section. And that's my time. So anyone who does know the Reading Rainbow song, now's the time to sing.
Do you guys see the flying